Devin, welcome to the show. You are officially my favorite new school, old school death metal band. Before we get started, I need you to make me a promise. Promise
Mhm.
to never, ever, ever change your snare sound.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. The ping is here to stay.
It's crucial. Crucial.
Yeah, mandatory.
Absolutely. Well, I guess my first question is, I feel like, and tell me if I'm right or wrong about this, but I feel like with you guys and just sort of the scene that you're part of in general, the reason it really kind of resonates with me is I feel like it's kind of all the good parts of hardcore and death metal. How much
Mm.
of an influence is hardcore for you guys, and how much do you feel like you belong in the hardcore scene?
Yeah, I mean, we all we all do come from a hardcore background, kind of. Sed and Cody and our band, they're also in the band Volcano, which is like a '90s like New York style hardcore, like Irate. Um, Drew, he listens to like bands like Gag. I call it like beer throwing punk. And then I'm a big I'm actually really big into like crust punk. I like bands
Okay.
like Tragedy, His Hero Is Gone, Skit System and stuff like that. And
Where's your butt flap?
dude, I have some like crust pants and stuff somewhere. I'd have to
Oh,
like
nice. Gonna
dig them
break
out.
those out one of these days.
Yeah, yeah. I used to hold them together with a shoestring. I used to check this out. Anytime we blow a hole, I used to use dental floss to like stitch it up. I was cruster for a minute, but
Nice.
yeah, yeah, and especially like growing up and being involved in the DIY scene, house shows and hardcore shows and metalcore shows were really the only shows that you can get into if you were, under the age of 18. We come from that scene because we were as young as like 11 and 12 years old going to shows. So that
Right.
was the scene that we kind of like hopped into. So yeah. And as far as hardcore, we take what we like. It's a genre, it's a style of music we're all really picky on too, because not every band does sound the same. Kind of like death metal, it's meat and potatoes. A lot of bands, sound the same in their own way. But yeah, yeah, definitely hardcore strides like with us, punk rock especially.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I feel like for me, I was always kind of like, and really quick, before we go any further, have you checked out my Patreon? Patrons get early access to all my main channel videos and my podcasts. I also do giveaways sometimes. For example, I just gave away a pair of these Eargasm earplugs. And if you want me to review your music, there's a way to do that as well. All you gotta do is join at the $10 and up level. Then every month I do a call for submissions. If you want me to review something, all you gotta do is drop it in the comments of that post. Then I will review it live on Twitch and post it on Patreon for everyone to see. So if that sounds cool, hit the link in the description of this video, and I appreciate your support. I like always had like one foot in punk and hardcore and like one foot in death metal. I always loved the sound of metal, but especially back in the 90s, death metal had a lot of let's just say some of the people could be kind of a bummer in the sense of a lot of like like legitimately like actually misogynist, racist, weird people, like and I don't mean in the sense of like, oh, let's call somebody, racist on Reddit. I mean like actual like gross weird people. Um
Yeah,
so I liked the sound of hardcore or the sound of like death metal, but sort of the culture of hardcore. And I feel like with you guys and a lot of the bands in your sort of scene, you've sort of bridged that gap. And it feels like you guys have all created this corner of death metal that's sort of like the best of both worlds.
yeah. I mean, from my experience, anyone I've met like in the scene and stuff, they've been good, stand up people, good moral ground, and they hold themselves to a good standard. So thankfully, I haven't encountered like full blatant like racism or misogyny or anything like that yet, which is cool. But yeah, we hold ourselves to a certain moral value, and we don't let ourselves fall under that. You know, I put myself to that moral standard, and my friends, even family. You know, and if I hear anybody like spreading like legitimate hate, then you know I'm quick to cut them off and disassociate with them.
You know, back in the day, it'd be like, you know, you'd hang out with the guy from some random death metal band that you liked, and he'd give you a ride somewhere, and he'd have like, you know, whatever, like a swastika, like hanging from like the rear view mirror of his car. And you're like, oh,
Yeah,
look at that.
yeah. You know, I have Jewish heritage, and I got friends that are like really into black metal, and you know, I'd start looking at their collection, and I'm like, oh, look,
Right.
I don't need to see that.
Yeah, you don't have to look too far.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing I really like about what you guys are doing is, for me, a lot of modern death metal of say the last 20 years or so gets a little bit too sterile to me, like kind of overproduced, and focuses a lot on being technical. And I get that, but for me personally, it's like it's not actually enjoyable to listen to, and it doesn't feel like pissed off anymore. And so what I like that you guys do is that it's, you know, nasty and it's filthy, but it's still super catchy. Almost, you know, it almost feels like it's like the Taylor Swift of death metal, because it's like so catchy and accessible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Shout out Paul Sidoti, Taylor Swift's guitarist. I love that guy actually. But yeah, I mean, you know, we like to play an ignorant style of music, and if we were like a progressive death metal band or a technical or melodic death metal band, it really wouldn't be able to. We wouldn't really be able to broadcast like that type of theme with our music. So, you know, we like to keep it short and to the point, and then also add in a couple like polka and like mince beats to
Yes, yes.
get the dancing. You know.
I was actually specifically going to ask about the polka beat. I feel
Mhm.
like it's underrated.
Yeah, yeah. We like to go full on like Daddy Yankee with our music, man, and it's cool because we call it tuba, and this the
Yeah,
you know it gets the butt shaking, and
right.
yeah, as you know, you want to dance, and then all of a sudden you're just like, man, I'm ready to headbang so hard I catch whiplash.
Ready to go. Yeah, it almost
Yeah,
kind of reminds me of like gore grind stuff like Gut and Cock and Ball Torture, which I love.
yeah, man, yeah. Especially Gut and
I love Gut.
yeah, man, yeah, they're great band, and
Very
every
underrated.
sounds different. They're the one that sounds like more old school Swedish death metal mixed with their sound is really cool. They also had a sound where they put like hip hop into it.
That's my favorite one, The Comeback. I love that
Yeah,
album. It's so fucking weird. Nobody has ever done, and it's so fucking strange, and I love it.
yeah, yeah. We uh I do a little bit, but Cody, our drummer and engineer, especially, he comes from a big gore grind background. He does a one man project called Putrid Stew, where
Okay.
it's all that, and then yeah, they even did a split with like fluids and stuff too.
Oh,
So
nice. I'll check that out.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's cool because I think you guys are kind of bringing that sensibility to, like, I'll just say, like, the Brooklyn vegan type people who I think, you know, probably haven't been exposed to it before.
yeah, yeah,
No shade to the Brooklyn vegan folks. Just, you
yeah.
know.
There's no shade at all. But yeah, definitely want to bring an underground style of music to the craft beer crowd, and you know,
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, we like to blend everything that we like and just in kind of one particular package. Like we take the kind of hardcore or metalcore that we like, mixed with like our style of death metal, which usually is like mid '90s to early 2000s, like New York death and brutal death, and then also throw in like gore grind, and then throw in like big named like metal influences like a Gojira or you know, like the riff styles of like a Machine Head or Pantera, and just kind of like dumb it down and put it in all one crazy box and type. for people.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying dumb it down, but I don't think that's I know you're being modest, but I don't think that's actually fair or accurate to yourselves, because like it's harder to write something that's catchy than it is to just like play as many notes as you possibly can and blast all the time. Like that's like physically difficult to do, but it's
Mhm.
not really it's not difficult to write. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Especially, especially us being such like nerds about music in general. It's so easy for us to think like, man, is this, like this is what we want, but is it too much for like the general population, or people like just getting into it? Is it accessible, for the crowd we're trying to broadcast to? And
Yeah.
we're just like, man, less is more sometimes, and it is hard to write like that. And I like to, but also at the same token, we even write riffs like, you remember that band Judd
Yeah, of
at all?
course.
Yeah. So sometimes I'll do Judd riffs like in my phone and be like, yo, Cody, let's write something like this, So
For
we'll
those
do
who
like,
haven't heard it, it's a cappella hardcore band from the 90s. I think wasn't it like Steve and Paul from Assuck or something?
yeah, with some ass suck guys, and they yeah, it was a acapella straight edge band.
Right. Jud, 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 jud.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's actually, I swear that's a riff of theirs.
I think it actually is, yes.
But yeah, and it is, hard to kind of write like that, just because being so nerdy and wanting to go like 320 BPM and shred guitar and sneak in solos. It's like, this isn't really the band for it. This is more of
Right.
the get the people moving, get the fist flying type of stuff.
Right. And I think, to that point, with a lot of the modern, like super technical stuff, it doesn't, even though it is super fast, it doesn't feel fast to me, because, it doesn't have the dynamics. Whereas with you guys, when you blast, it actually feels fast. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, for sure. I think what that is if it's like steady, like gravity blasting like the entire time, that
Yeah.
their song, it gets kind of lost because it's not going anywhere. There's
Right.
no mixed fills or pauses or bass breaks or anything like that in between to really catch your attention. So, that's something that, we try to do with every song. There's a dynamic there where we're like, all right, here's the blasting section, so that people could be like, what the fuck? And then
Yeah.
let's get right back into that beginning riff, but play it slower.
Because like if you listen to a lot of, say like early to mid 90s death metal, they don't actually blast that often.
No, yeah. It didn't really become a thing until maybe mid to late 90s. You had like brutal death bands like, Mortal Decay,
Right.
Suffocation put out their uh oh man, I already forgot the name of it. Oh, Despise the Sun EP.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that's when they started going like hyperspeed.
Yeah, and he starts blasting like crazy. So, but yeah, it was more so like just like thrash beats and just like
Right.
simple beats back in the day. And we like to play on that too. Like our demo, it has a lot of D beat beats
Okay, I
and
haven't
stuff.
heard the demo.
Yeah. The demo is that was before Cody like really got into like a lot of more like brutal bands. I kind of like showed him a lot of things that he gravitated towards after that EP came out. But he's more of a punk and grind and mathcore kid. So
Got it.
yeah,
So you got him into Mortal Decay, brought him to the
yeah.
dark side.
And I got him into like bands like Eternal Suffering, Mortal Decay, um, you name it.
Are you into any of the kind of more like obscure Texas stuff, like Prophecy and that stuff?
Yeah, yeah. What is it? Foreseen and Forsaken.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Old something like that. Yeah, that
What's
record's
they have that album like Keeping It Fucking Brutal or whatever.
yeah, yeah. That's I think that was their old label, like Ablated Records. They're from out in Ohio.
Yeah,
They
that's right.
keeping it fucking sick.
Yeah, that's what
Um,
it was. That's right. Yeah.
yeah, man. I love. I think Texas, as far as like scene wise, there's such. I mean, they're a huge state. They have like the tightest like death metal scene because
Yeah.
because they have bands like Prophecy, Devourment,
Hmm.
Mashiach, Insidious Discrepancy.
Yep.
You know, all that stuff, man. They breed some sick bands there. But yeah, Texas,
Texas and
a
Long
few
Island. I don't know why.
yeah, a few Midwest bands, and then the Long Island bands like Dehumanized, Malamore,
Yep.
Disfigured,
Yep.
Suffocation,
Do
Bleeding, all
you
that
ever get
shit.
into Repudiation?
Yeah, Repudiation. Yeah, of course, from New Jersey.
Yeah, they're from Long Island, I think, but
Oh,
yeah,
they are.
close
Okay.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah. That band's really fucking cool, man. Their demo's really sick.
Yeah, love that stuff. I'm glad that you guys are bringing it, to the masses, and I think it's really, you guys have done, you guys have done that as far as like bringing that kind of sound and sensibility and stuff to the craft beer crowd, and that's not that I never thought I would see the day, but here it is.
Yeah, man. I think I don't know, man. The way I think about it is like it's almost like a timeline thing. A couple years ago, like the Swedish death metal hardcore crossover was
Hmm.
kind of like you had a lot of the HM2 clone bands.
Right.
And I think it was to only follow suit. Like you already covered like the late 80s.
Right.
Now that is like, the early to mid 90s kind of.
It just takes them 25 years or so to catch up, but they'll get there.
Yeah, man. It's crazy. I think, yeah, everything has like a resurgence, now people are wearing high top shoes and big pit Viper glasses. It
That's
looks
right.
like these. Yeah, I'm waiting for a Morton Downey Jr. Interview
Right. Any day.
any
Uh,
day.
I also like that you guys have a sense of humor. Archspire is another band that does that, and it just sort of like shows that you can have fun with this stuff, and that death metal can be, that you can have fun, and that doesn't make your music any less respectable or less legit, and it doesn't make you like a joke band. Where does that come from? And do people ever like get upset because jokes aren't metal?
Yeah. People do raise a stink about it sometimes, but it's like, why are you mad? Like,
Right.
as far as music, we stick to the same formula, but with merchandise or social media presence or talking to us, we let our personality shine through because we're not serial killers like our lyrics would make us out to be. We're one of us is a family man, has a kid he's raising, and then Cody's like really connected into his family. He hangs out with his mom literally every day, and then
Definitely not metal.
yeah, my girlfriend has a degree in liberal arts and women's studies, so I'm not allowed to be a misogynist even if I want. So yeah, and yeah, people do get us think about it. Where it comes from is just being a dude, being raised up on subterranean like Jackass and Beavis and Butthead shit, and I also have a background in stand up comedy.
Okay.
Yep, I've done open mics for a few years. I've performed like in Columbus, Cincinnati, stand up circuit, and I did like 2 shows in Cleveland before I started like touring full time with my band. But yeah, most of like the lowbrow like joking stuff, that's just us like shooting the shit and trying to be funny. And then when it comes time to like, hey, we need something for this or that, it's like, well, y'all like that one thing I had, and it's like, I thought that was a joke. I was like, do you want to run with it anyways? So yeah, we're just not really serious dudes altogether.
Yeah, but it doesn't. I think what people don't understand or don't. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with a lot of these metal people. It's like they're very like just sort of one note. It's like you have to be the metal guy at all times in all situations, and
Mhm.
that's like human beings are multifaceted people. You don't have to be just you know, the one
Yeah.
guy at all times.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely something, we do kind of turn on and off, like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, but it's, like when it's on stage, when we're loading in and stuff, it's all business. Um, when we're performing, it's all serious, but, even my banter in between songs, like I like to stop songs and like be like, hold up, hold up, hold up. And then go right into a guttural and then we come right back or make jokes. I remember I was in Poland. I was singing Jump by Van Halen to someone in the crowd and he didn't know, he had no clue what I was doing. And I just started pointing. So yeah, I mean, like we like to have fun, but I think that just comes hand in hand with being an ignorant style of music is like we could play like hard hitting shit and then I could call you a chump or make fun of you or make fun of myself and it's all in good fun.
I think you should do a whole set in character as Will Romer from Mortician.
Dude, he's that's not a character.
Oh, I know. I don't know if he lived in Cleveland or something, but I saw him for a while at shows there, and definitely not a character. Hey, what's up, man? Will from Mortician.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Did you live in Cleveland for a minute?
Yeah, 96 to 99.
Oh, no way. Okay.
Yeah, so I saw like Nunslaughter and Embalmer and all that
Balmer.
stuff.
I've shared
that was
Embalmer for a minute too, and Decrepit and
yeah, they were great. Yeah, that was a great time for like, I grew up in Seattle, which basically had zero metal scene and still does have zero metal scene, and then I moved to Cleveland, and that's when do you remember that band Odious Sanction by any chance?
Yeah, Steve Shilady from Immolation. That was his band.
Yeah, so the drummer of Odious Sanction was like super cool and got me into a lot of, he got me into like Deeds of Flesh and all that kind of stuff. And it was just like, it was cool to actually be able to see some of these bands that I sort of knew about, but there was just like zero scene in Seattle back then. And it was, Cleveland, not my favorite place in the world, but the metal scene at the time was fucking awesome. So I got to see all those bands, at the old Fantasy and stuff. And it was really cool.
Fantasy, man. Yeah. And the Flying Machine and Lorraine.
Yep.
And then Parma has a lot of cool bands too. Yeah, I for years, man, I was going to Lakewood, and then I was going to East Cleveland of all places to practice with bands and start bands and stuff too, because they've always had such a rich scene. Yeah, and Mike Hamilton from Deeds of Flesh, he lives there now.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, man, and yeah, Cleveland. As far as like Ohio in general, as far as like Ohio bands, they're the spot that had like the bands that I gravitated towards a lot. And they also had the Ohio Death Fest for a few years. So yeah, Mortician.
I went to maybe it was in 98. I think that was maybe like the second or third one or something. I went to that one.
I think it was the second one. Yeah, I think Cryptopsy, Deeds of Flesh, Mortician, Dead End, all those bands played that.
Yep. I remember seeing Dead End, and I think Moral Decay played that one too, and Internal Bleeding. That was a good one. I mean, what a fucking cool time for death. I feel like I just got to see it at the absolute perfect moment.
Yeah, man. And and I talked to Brian, who organized that fest a lot. I started going to shows in Cleveland when I was like 16 and 17. As soon as I could drive, I was like, Devourment and Dying Fetus at Peabody's, I'm there. So I skipped school the next day, but he kind of took me under his wing, man. And I got to see like all those flyers and stuff, and I was like, damn, had I been born like 10 years prior, like I would have been there.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, and then seeing those bands for like, I saw some of the flyers. It was like $15 a day or something like that, and it's like, how? Like
I'm sure nobody made a penny.
Right. And then Dan, who a friend of mine who played drums in Regurgitation, he was like, dude, Dying Fetus played literally my backyard for $100, man. And like, That's insane. You know, I've
Yeah.
had people tell me they saw Dying Fetus in a basement, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, that's crazy. The '90s. If I had a DeLorean, I'd gun it to 90, 94, 95 for real.
Yeah, I mean, it was the '90s were a great time for death metal, and it's interesting to see, like you were saying before, that people start to kind of appreciate that era because,
Mhm.
I mean, nobody really gave a shit about Devourment back then. You
Yeah.
know, like I love them. I mean, I know them. I think they're awesome bands. So that's like no shade towards them at all. It's just like I noticed maybe about 5 years ago, people started to sort of pick up on Devourment. It's like I wish that happened 20 years earlier, but better late than never.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, man. And I think that, you know, early in the 2000s too, you know, there were a lot of bands that were kind of not blatantly like plagiarizing, but kind of biting their sound a little bit.
Sure.
When you had bands like Condemned and
Yeah.
Cephalotrips and stuff like that from San Diego.
Yeah.
Um, it was basically like, let's be Devourment and Disconformity, like rolled in one. And
Yeah.
all these slam bands, man, if if you're in a slam band, especially like you know, like hip hop looking like, and you're not nodding your hat to or ever heard of Internal Bleeding and Devourment, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Internal Bleeding, actually the creators of the term slam.
Absolutely, yeah. They're the ones that coined it.
The actual OGs.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I mean that shit still holds up in my book. I don't know. I mean, it's like slam is it's just so interesting to see people care about slam now because I mean it was just like only the most like just I don't know the right way to put it, just total basement porn collector weirdos cared about slam for the
Yeah.
longest time. And now like hardcore kids like it and deathcore kids and stuff, which is great.
Hmm.
It's just it still is sort of hard for me to believe that there's anybody else on the planet that knows who disconformity is, you know?
Yeah, man. I think what it comes down to is like, you know, with deathcore, like early deathcore becoming like so big, and you have bands like Animosity, Despised Icon, Suicide Silence, who had breakdowns, and then a lot of these hardcore kids are getting really into like beatdown bands, which is
Yeah.
basically in its own way like slam with punk beat drums
Yeah.
and more audible vocals. And it's just like, what's more ignorant and harder than that? And it's it's slam.
Yeah.
And
I always felt like if you like Bulldoze, you should like Cerebral Incubation.
hell yeah, dude, I'm seeing the Bulldoze like memorial set this
Oh,
weekend actually.
nice.
Yeah,
They sound
yeah,
good. I was talking to Chris, the drummer, and obviously, different lineup. It's basically like Agents of Man now.
nice.
Is essentially like it's Puda from Agents of Man as the vocalist now and stuff. They sound great, and again, happy that people finally are kind of catching on to Bulldoze. 20 years late, but better late than never.
For sure. Yeah, dude, I'm stoked to see. I haven't seen TUI since I was in eighth grade, so I get to see TUI, Bulldoze. Who else? I think Crown of Thorns is on that, so I get to
Oh,
see
nice.
Danny Diablo.
Bring your
He's,
mouth guard for that one.
oh yeah, dude, I'm gonna show up in all pads, full gear.
I Cleveland hardcore scene in the '90s was also awesome. I saw every band come through because like Seattle bands just wouldn't even play Seattle back then because it was a small market and the routing sucks. Like the only city that's even somewhat close is Portland, and other than that, like it's Idaho, Montana. There's like nothing close to Seattle, so a lot of bands just wouldn't play. And maybe twice a year, Earth Crisis or VOD or something would come through, maybe. And so I didn't get to see any of those bands until I moved to Cleveland, and then I saw all of them, and
Oh
definitely like very different. I mean, there was at least one fight at every single show I went to in Cleveland in the
yeah, man.
'90s, at least.
Seeing growing up, you know, that's I've seen a lot of, dude, was Cold as Life, Ringworm,
Yep.
Integrity. Um, uh, and Columbus, we're actually known for having Pit Boss. So
Uh huh. Yep, I saw them. I saw them on Valentine's Day of 1998. That was my
Gnarly, gnarly. I
great
can
way to
only
spend Valentine's
get that
Day.
picture saying on stage on a day like Valentine's Day.
I don't
But
remember, but I'm sure it was. I'm
yeah,
sure it was very special.
yeah, man. So Ohio is a big melting pot of metal and hardcore. And what's cool now is like those scenes aren't just really crossing over. It's it's working really well. Like people are getting along with each other. People aren't really that mad when they see someone crowd killing. Believe it or not, it's kind of you have someone raise a stink about it here and
Yeah,
there, but it's like, what are you gonna do, man? Like let the kids have their fun, man. As long as
yeah.
they're really buddy.
People ask me about that a lot, and it's like
Mhm.
I totally understand if you don't want to get crowd killed. Like I completely get that. I don't want to get crowd killed either. That's why I
Right.
just stay out of the way.
Hmm.
And if you think it's stupid, I understand that too, but it's just that's just what happens at a hardcore show. And
Yeah,
it's just what it is,
for
right or
sure.
wrong.
And I think if anyone wants to like fight or be up in arms about it, it's like, well, then who's really the asshole there,
Right, exactly.
But at the same token, like I get both sides of the coin. It's
Yeah.
just that's what ignorant music, does. It brings out the craziness in people. And what's cool, man, is playing death metal. And because I used to watch like Napalm Death's like live corruption,
Yeah.
and I'd be like, damn, people are stage diving to a death metal band. I've never
Right.
seen that,
Because they
and
were really a hardcore band.
exactly. And then like we started playing, and I think it was just because of who we know, like our friends coming to shows. It was just like, damn, this is cool. Like we could stage dive and stuff to this. And
Yeah.
now Ohio's got like mixed bills. We got hardcore bands uh playing with death metal bands. Like in New York you could see All Out War with Internal Bleeding. You could see Sworn
Right.
Enemy supporting Dying Fetus or Dehumanized or something. And it's like over there it made sense, and because they've been doing it for so long. But now we're starting to do it here, and people are fucking with it. The scene here's grown a lot, especially in the last I mean, like a year before COVID, and the last year, it's really been growing a lot here.
Well, that's cool to hear because the issue in the past was always when hardcore bands would play with metal bands, the metal people kind of didn't really get hardcore
Yeah,
and they would, what's that?
I said that was their cigarette break band.
Well, yeah, that, or they would get upset that people were dancing and they would, maybe pick a fight with the wrong person and get smashed.
Yeah,
And, it just sucks seeing some metal guy who doesn't understand what's happening get the shit kicked out of him by five hardcore dudes. On the other hand, maybe they shouldn't have run their mouth to the wrong person. And it's just, it shouldn't happen, but it
yeah,
would happen all the time just because the metal people didn't really get it. And if that's not the case anymore, that's good to hear.
yeah. I mean, I've still been going to shows every chance I get. I haven't seen it, but you know, because I feel like also everyone is getting into it too. Like in the scene, you have the old heads that are true black and white to metal. Um, they'll either distance themselves from that kind of stuff, or they won't come to the show. But
Yeah, which is fine. If it's
yeah,
not your thing, don't go.
yeah, just as long as like shit's not started, man. Because an important thing in your DIY scene is it's communal. It's be it Scott Vogel says it best, man. Be a community, not a commodity. Be
Right.
brother and sister with each other. Don't look at each other as if like they're a target or they're in your way or they're taking up space and breathing up your air. Like y'all are here because you fuck with this same style of music, and just because it moves something a certain way, that doesn't mean they need to get decked. And
Right.
if you get hit by accident, you can reciprocate it in any way you want. Just try not to bring actual full-fledged violence
Right.
and where it doesn't need to be.
I used to live in Cincinnati also at kind of the the peak of Cincinnati being really crazy, Cincinnati hardcore being super crazy.
Mhm.
And going to shows there was interesting. I saw like Suicide Silence with like Machine Head or something. I don't remember what it was, but like the metal people there just sort of understood that if you saw people there with short hair that dressed kind of normal, just stay out of the way, you know. And you know, it worked. They're just like, we don't really understand what's wrong with those guys, but we know that you don't want any part of that, so just stay out of their way and it'll be fine.
For sure, man. Yeah, it's I mean, heck, I remember being as young as like 14 and seeing seeing like Conducting from the Grave and like Impending Doom at a church of all places, full-fledged venue, and just see people start swinging on each other.
Right.
I'm just like, man, I feel like if I got in that, like someone would catch a charge. Like, you know.
And some of them did. Yeah,
Yeah.
that did happen. Yeah, well, I'm, you know, I mean, it's sort of, I don't know, funny to like talk about that stuff, but it actually sucks seeing somebody who just doesn't understand what's happening get their nose shattered or something. You know, if someone, if you know what you're getting yourself into and you're dancing and you get kicked in the face and, you know, break your nose, it's like, well, you knew what, you know, you knew what you were signing up for.
Yeah.
But it's a bummer when someone doesn't get it, and that's sort of what I don't like seeing. It's like someone who just doesn't understand what's happening get actually hurt.
Yeah, and that happens, man. And you know, like thankfully, like we've had people that are, you know, nice enough to be like, yo, I'm really sorry. Do you need, you know, medical attention? Do I need to take you somewhere and things like that? Because we've, you know, we've also played like tight areas where people are, you know, shoulder to shoulder with each other. So it's like, how can you escape that? You know,
Right,
and
right.
I watched this guy, he he was doing this, like it looked like a backstroke, and this guy was behind him and he's just doing this, and all of a sudden I see the dude like go down because he dropped his glasses. So as soon as he goes down,
Uh,
he gets a bow in the face and his nose just, it's gushing like crazy. And we're just like, do we stop? You know, so um, you know, people you gotta also remember, like, people are looking out for each other too. So, you know, if you jump the gun and start swinging on somebody just because they're moshing hard, you don't know how someone else is going to reciprocate that. Like we've had the last time we played Cincinnati, we had I won't give out names because I know damn well they love, and so they're, I'm not gonna, but we know them.
yeah.
But one of our friends drop kicked someone in the face like mid song because they started swinging on another friend. Someone started swinging on another friend of ours, and it's just like, now that dude's like needs attention. He's probably going to be taken out in the squad, and we don't we don't want that kind of like dirt on us or blood on our hands. So, you know, try to, you don't have to keep your hands to yourselves, but, you know, keep your hands at a respectable level, I guess.
Maybe you should give out boxing gloves, like when Amir made their boxing gloves.
That's funny as hell. Mouth,
Maybe that's
mouth
the way to go. Yeah,
base.
exactly. You know, have a ref. Bring a ref with you. Separate people. Give them a standing 8 count.
Hell yeah. Just
Do
ring a
that.
bell.
Yeah, exactly. Well, a couple more questions for you. One thing, on the topic of the snare, same thing. You have one of the most ridiculous logos of all time, but it kind of works. Any thoughts on selling out and having a readable logo, or are you gonna stay slam?
Yeah, well, we're going to stay a legible logo as we possibly can. We did do a rare like crew neck that had a wild style graffiti logo because
Oh,
we were
okay.
like LDB, and we were, you know, also playing with Terror and Kubla Khan and Pain of Truth. So we were like, we need some hardcore merch. So
Right.
we did what's the cool thing about wild style graffiti is it's still very,
can't read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it kind of worked for that. And, if we'll do renditions like we did, man, was it divine intervention, that weird Slayer logo that has like points. We did do something with that on a tour shirt. It was like our first ever tour we did, just to kind of like be funny, and it said it on the back. But now, like, if it grows bigger, and even if you see us like on an arena marquee, we're still gonna rock that logo. I feel like it would look really cool on a jumbotron or something.
Keeping it fucking sick.
That's right, keeping it fucking.
Well, on that note, the arenas, the word on the street is that you guys are the next hype band. So I'm gonna put you on the spot. What do you think? Are you gonna blow up? It does seem like you're on a little bit of a wave here, and it seems like, this kind of music does have potential to be bigger than it has been, maybe ever. What do you think?
Damn, man, I never really put things in that perspective, man. We're all really humble dudes. I don't realize how much attention, or if people really fuck with it until we get on stage, and I see people go off. But if we're ever to get there, that's dope. It's I guess that would be like a goal of ours. We definitely want, we keep supporting death metal and the underground. We definitely want it to be more exposed, and we want bands, or like our peers and our friends, to come up along with us, like 200 Stab Wounds, on Death, and so forth. Yeah, I mean, that would be sick. Anytime someone compares me to like Corpse Grinder or Frank Mullen, I'm just like, that's blasphemy in my world. Like, I'm not. Those are gods. I'm not a god. You
got to get your Frank Mullen chop.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
He's the man. Sickest. I will plant that flag and say that he is the sickest death metal vocalist and frontman.
He's a beast. Sounds 100% as good live as he does recorded, which is super rare.
Yeah, man. And still, I saw them 2 dates at that farewell tour, and still, man, even he probably, I don't know how much he rehearsed, but for him to talk like, with Suffocation from fucking Island, New York, this song is called In Trails of You, and then go right into like the hardest shit you've ever heard.
Yeah.
And it's like, how did you go straight from like mobster goon to a Cookie Monster, possessed Cookie Monster, like out of nowhere? That's sick.
The power of Frank Mullen.
Yeah.
Channeling all the chakra of Long Island into his body. That's
right there.
Is. There we go. Cool. Well, I will let you go. Thank you very much for your time, and definitely keep in touch. Happy to help however I can.
Appreciate it, Finn. Always good talking to you, man. Take it easy.